Mr. Man, I have noticed something about you. Despite being a good man, you don't have some good courtesy. You don't know how to say you are welcome when I say thank you. You don't greet or answer to greetings when we meet for the day. It seems like you were one spoiled brat while growing up. Thankfully, I'm not the only spoiled brat here. You have got some sharp tongue, young woman, but I admit I wasn't very friendly with you. If you are willing to teach me some of this courtesy, I'll be willing to take notes. Pauline sat by Zion's hospital bed, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. The room smelled of antiseptic and hope. Hope that he was finally safe. The IV drip beside him beeped rhythmically, a sound that now felt comforting instead of terrifying. John had disappeared after paying the hospital bills, leaving Pauline confused. Did he just help and walk away? She wondered. Just then, the door swung open and John strolled in, holding 2 bags of food. I figured you might be hungry, he said casually, dropping them on the bedside table. Pauline blinked at him. You came back. What? You thought I was one of those rich guys who throws money at a problem and vanishes? Yes. John scoffed. I'm insulted. And by the way, my name is John Duru. I'm Pauline Eze, and my brother is Zion Eze. Thank you for saving his life, Pauline said. John simply nodded and got busy with his phone. Pauline hesitated, then opened one of the bags. The aroma of jollof rice and fried plantain hit her nose. Her stomach growled loudly. John raised an eyebrow. Was that your stomach growling so loudly that I could hear it? That was really aggressive. When last did you eat? Pauline cleared her throat. It's been a while since I had real food. She picked up a spoon and took a bite. Her eyes rolled back. Oh my God, is this from Yellow Plate? John nodded. Only the best. Pauline stuffed another spoonful into her mouth. I love that place. Back when we lived in our house, my dad used to... She stopped, swallowing hard. The memories hurt too much. John noticed the shift in her expression. You do miss them, don't you? Pauline stared at her plate, suddenly not so hungry. Every second of every day. Do you mind telling me about them? And how did you and your brother end up in the village? John asked. Pauline went on to tell him everything about her parents, the company, and their unfortunate demise that led to her uncles confiscating everything. When she finished, John was silent. Are you not going to say anything? John remained silent. Oh well, I should have just stayed silent then, Pauline said, slightly angry that John didn't react in any way. I will be back, he said simply and vanished. What sort of man is this? So I wasted my time sharing my life history with him, and he couldn't even utter a word. I think his wealth got into his head. From now on, I'm just going to mind my business. It seems I talk too much, Pauline said, fuming inside. 2 days later, Zion was surprisingly responding very fast to treatment. The doctor was already talking about discharging them. But John was nowhere in sight. On the 4th day, Zion was discharged from the hospital. And just when Pauline was thinking of how they were going to go back to the village, the private ward door opened, and in stepped John, looking handsome in a black suit and smelling good. "You came back again. I thought you abandoned us," Pauline said with both relief and annoyance. "Listen, I made some calls. Turns out your uncles are running your father's company like it's their personal piggy bank," John said without even exchanging pleasantries. Pauline's head snapped up. "You investigated them?" John shrugged. "I don't like thieves and I hate injustice." Pauline's chest tightened. No one, not even the people who once called themselves her parents' friends, had lifted a finger to help her. But here was this stranger, a wealthy man with no reason to care, fighting for them. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. John leaned back on a chair. "Honestly, I don't know. Maybe I just enjoy annoying corrupt old men." Pauline let out a small laugh. "You are not what I expected." John smirked. "Let me guess. You thought I'll be some arrogant, womanizing billionaire?" Pauline grinned. "I mean, you do have the expensive suit and the unnecessary luxury car." John feigned offense. "Excuse me, that car is very necessary." Pauline laughed, and for the first time since her parents' death, it felt genuine. "By the way, I was informed that Zion will be discharged today. Hope you were all well attended to." "Yes, we didn't lack food for a second. I really must thank you, John. You are a good man," Pauline said, meaning it. Where are you headed to from here?" "We are going back to the village. We have nowhere else to go. If you would do me one last favor of helping us with transportation back to the village, I will forever be grateful." "You are not returning back to that hut. I have a boys' quarter in one of my houses that no one is occupying. You and Zion will stay there for as long as you want. A time will come when you can go back to the village to thank the old woman that helped you with shelter. But for now, we need to shop for some clothes for you and Zion. I will get you a housekeeper and a nanny. They will help with taking care of Zion and with the house," John said. Pauline's eyes widened in disbelief. Just as she was about to thank him profusely, he said, "Meet me in the car downstairs. We have a lot to achieve today. And please, be fast about it." Pauline's brows furrowed. This man may be kind, but he was certainly the most arrogant man she had ever met, she thought to herself as she got Zion dressed and ready to go. The next day, while Pauline and Zion were relaxing in the boys' quarter watching a movie, John arrived. Without exchanging pleasantries, he went straight to the reason he was there. "Your uncles forged documents to seize the company. But if we can prove that they also had something to do with your parents' death, we can take them down completely." Pauline's heart raced. "How do we prove that?" "I have a private investigator. He's digging into their past dealings. But we also need someone on the inside. Someone who has worked with them long enough to know their dirty secrets." Pauline's mind flashed back to Mr. Adisa, her father's old friend. "Uncle Adisa," she blurted. "He warned me about my uncles. If anyone knows something, it's him." John grinned. "Now that's the fighting spirit I was hoping for." Pauline clenched her fist. I'm going to take back everything they stole, not just for me, but for Zion, for my parents. John studied her, admiration flickering in his eyes. Good, because I don't lose battles. Pauline felt a strange warmth in her chest. For the first time in months, she wasn't just surviving, she was fighting back. And she wasn't fighting alone. John and Pauline sat in his car outside Mr. Adisa's house, a modest bungalow with peeling paint and an old rusted gate. John glanced at Pauline. Are you sure about this guy? Pauline nodded. Mr. Adisa was my father's best friend. If anyone can help us out with vital information, he's the one. John sighed. All right, but if anything feels off, we are leaving. No arguments. Pauline rolled her eyes. You are not my bodyguard. John smirked. No, but I am the guy funding this investigation. So that makes me your very rich and concerned friend. Pauline snorted. Concerned my foot. They stepped out of the car and knocked on the door. A few moments later, the door creaked open, revealing Mr. Adisa. His eyes widened when he saw Pauline. My daughter, is this really you? Pauline smiled. Yes, uncle, it's me. He pulled her into a warm hug, then stepped back to examine her. I'm glad you are all right. I have been trying to find you, but didn't know who to ask. Come in, come in. They entered his small living room, which smelled faintly of old newspapers and groundnut soup. John looked around, subtly checking for anything suspicious. Uncle, I need your help, Pauline said, getting straight to the point. Mr. Adisa sighed and sank into his chair. I knew this day would come. John raised an eyebrow. So you do know something? Mr. Adisa hesitated, glancing at John. Who is he? Pauline quickly introduced him. Uncle, John has been helping me and Zion. If not for him, my brother wouldn't have survived. Mr. Adisa studied John for a moment, then nodded. All right, I'll tell you everything. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Your uncles, Chief Ebuka and Chief Nnamdi, have been plotting since before your father died. They were drowning in gambling debts and stealing from the company. When your father discovered the missing funds, he confronted them. He planned to take legal action. Pauline's fists clenched. And that's why they killed him? Mr. Adisa's face darkened. Yes, they hired someone to tamper with the brakes. The accident was no accident. Pauline covered her mouth, her body trembling with rage. And my mother, she wasn't actively involved in the business. Why did they target her? Mr. Adisa sighed heavily. They feared that your father may have discussed it with her, so they thought it was better to get rid of both of them at the same time. That was why they waited for the day they were heading out together for that very important business dinner. Pauline felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. She felt the pain again, just like that night she received a call about her parents' accident. John's jaw tightened. These men are worse than I thought. Pauline turned to Mr. Adisa, her eyes blazing. Why didn't you tell me this before? Tears filled the old man's eyes. I was scared, my daughter. Your uncles are dangerous men. They have connections. I wanted to protect you, and I wanted to be sure of my findings before coming to conclusions. John scoffed. Well, guess what? I have connections too, and unlike them, mine don't operate in the shadows. Mr. Adisa nodded solemnly. I'm willing to testify in court, but you must be careful, Pauline. Your uncles won't go down without a fight. Pauline stood up, her voice steady. Then let's give them one. That night, John made a few calls. His private investigator, Detective Musa, sent him a file containing details of Chief Ebuka and Chief Nnamdi's illegal dealings, fraud, money laundering, even a connection to an arms dealer. John smirked. These fools have been busy. Pauline peered over his shoulder. So, what do we do? John leaned back. Simple. We let them think they've won, and then we strike when they least expect it. Pauline narrowed her eyes. You are enjoying this, aren't you? A little bit, John grinned. Pauline rolled her eyes. Remind me never to get on your bad side. It's a little too late for that now. The courtroom was packed to the brim. Journalists, lawyers, and curious onlookers filled the seats, eager to witness the high-profile case of Pauline and Zion Eze versus Ebuka and Nnamdi Eze. Pauline sat beside John, her hands clenched into fists. Zion, though fully recovered, sat quietly next to her, his eyes darting nervously around the room. John leaned in. Breathe, Pauline. We've got this. Pauline inhaled deeply, trying to calm her racing heart. She looked up at the judge, a stern-looking woman who already seemed unimpressed by the defense lawyer's long-winded arguments. On the other side of the courtroom, Chief Ebuka and Chief Nnamdi sat smugly in their expensive suits, whispering to their lawyer. Pauline's blood boiled at the sight of them. They killed my parents. They stole everything from us. And now they're sitting there like kings. John must have sensed her anger because he tapped her hand under the table. Relax, he whispered. Let them dig their own graves. And dig they did. Call your next witness, the judge said. Pauline's lawyer, a sharp-witted woman named Barrister Ada, stood up. The prosecution calls Mr. Adisa to the stand. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Chief Ebuka and Chief Nnamdi's smug expressions vanished. Mr. Adisa, looking both nervous and determined, made his way to the witness stand. After swearing to tell the truth, he adjusted his glasses and stared straight at Pauline's uncles. Mr. Adisa, Barrister Ada began, you were a close associate of the late Mr. Eze. Can you tell us what you know about his death? Mr. Adisa took a deep breath. Yes, his death was no accident. His brothers, Ebuka and Nnamdi, arranged for his car brakes to be tampered with. The courtroom erupted. A reporter dropped his pen. People murmured. A woman in the back let out a dramatic, Jesus is Lord! Pauline's uncles jumped to their feet. Lies! Chief Ebuka shouted. This is a setup. Order in the court. The judge banged her gavel. Barrister Ada smirked. Mr. Adisa, Do you have proof? Mr. Adisa nodded. Yes, I have records of the payments made to the mechanic who sabotaged the car. I also have a recording of Chief Ebuka confessing to a business partner. More gasps. John leaned toward Pauline. Checkmate. Pauline grinned. Chief Ebuka and Chief Nnamdi's lawyer scrambled to object, but Barrister Ada was relentless. She presented bank statements, voice recordings, and testimonies from former employees who confirmed that Pauline's uncles had stolen from the company for years. Then came the final blow. Barrister Ada turned to the judge. Your Honor, we also have forged documents proving that Chief Ebuka and Chief Nnamdi illegally took over the company, stealing it from the rightful heirs, Pauline and Zion Eze. The judge adjusted her glasses. Is this true, Counselor? She asked Chief Ebuka and Chief Nnamdi's lawyer. The man sweated profusely. The judge sighed. I have heard enough. Chief Ebuka and Chief Nnamdi looked terrified. I hereby rule in favor of Pauline and Zion Eze, the judge announced. The company, assets, and properties shall be returned to them immediately. As for the charges of fraud and conspiracy to commit murder, Ebuka and Nnamdi Eze will be remanded in prison pending further investigation. The courtroom exploded in cheers. Pauline clutched John's arm, tears streaming down her face. We did it! We actually did it! John smirked. Correction, you did it. Pauline looked into his eyes. No, John, we did it. And then she rushed to her brother and gave him a tight hug as both of them shed tears of happiness. Few days later, after all the formalities, Pauline and Zion returned to their family mansion, their home. Zion ran through the halls, his laughter echoing in the grand house they had once lost. Pauline stood outside on the balcony, watching the sunset. John stood beside her, hands in his pockets. So, he said, you are officially a rich woman again. Pauline smiled. I never wanted the money. I just wanted justice. John nodded. And now, you have it. I couldn't have done it without you, John. Thank you, Pauline said. A long silence stretched between them. Pauline bit her lip. So what happens now? She finally asked. John exhaled. My job here is done. It's time to let you enjoy what rightfully belongs to you, while I go looking for more business opportunities or more corrupt men to annoy. Pauline's heart sank. For weeks, she had convinced herself that John was just a helper, a good man doing a good thing. But now, the thought of him leaving hurt more than anything. She took a shaky breath. John? He turned to her. Yeah? She looked straight into his eyes. Please, don't go. I feel safe around you. John's eyebrows lifted. Pauline, you are safe now. Your worst fears are behind bars. I know you think this is just gratitude, or maybe you think you will look like you are taking advantage of me, she said quickly. But you are not. She hesitated, then gathered her courage. I have gotten so used to having you around, John. John smirked. I'm sure you don't expect me to be following you around everywhere you go, just to assure you of your safety. And if my memory serves me right, you once told me that I'm not your bodyguard." Pauline smiled. Then her heart raced as she voiced out what she had been afraid to say for a while. "John, I know that what I feel isn't just security when you are around me. I'm afraid I have fallen in love with you. And if you feel the same way, I don't want you to leave." For a long moment, John said nothing. Then slowly, he smiled. "You have no idea how long I've wanted to hear that," he murmured. Pauline gasped. You do?" John chuckled. "Of course I do. But I didn't want you to think that I helped you just because of that. I didn't want you to think you needed to pay me back by submitting yourself to me." "I wasn't going to submit myself to you, Mr. Man," Pauline said, smiling. "I don't care why you helped me. I just know that I want you here, with me." John closed the space between them, cupping her face. "Then I guess I'm staying." They both shared a passionate kiss that seemed like it wasn't going to end. And then Pauline pulled away. "Mr. Man, I have noticed something about you. Despite being a good man, you don't have some good courtesy. You don't know how to say you are welcome when I say thank you. You don't greet or answer to greetings when we meet for the day. It seems like you were one spoiled brat while growing up," Pauline said, feigning annoyance. John threw his head back, laughing, a very heartfelt laugh he hadn't had in a long time. "Thankfully, I'm not the only spoiled brat here. You have got some sharp tongue, young woman, but I admit I wasn't very friendly with you. If you are willing to teach me some of this courtesy, I'll be willing to take notes," he said, still smiling. Pauline smiled and hugged him again. For the first time in a long time, she not only felt safe, but truly happy. Pauline and Zion rebuilt their lives. The company thrived under their leadership, and their story became a symbol of justice. As for John and Pauline, well, let's just say that the wedding bells weren't far away. The moral of the story is simple. Justice may take time, but it always finds a way. Never let fear stop you from fighting for what's right. And sometimes, love finds you in the most unexpected places. Thank you so much for watching the last part of the story. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And let us move the conversation to the comment section because I would love to hear your thoughts on the story. Until I come your way again soon, stay happy.